if you really want my opinion, I don't think you can.
We have one last message to Congress and the White House. I am no longer asking for...
Hey everybody, I am your host Elad, and today I'm reporting to you from Foley Square in New York City at the climate strike. Let's go talk to some people, see what's going on. Any chance I can get a quick interview?
Sure.
So we're out here today for the climate strike. You guys got off of school to come here and protest. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here, what it means for you?
The future of the world is a lot more impactful globally than it is for the individual actually going to school or anything. So they definitely did the right thing letting people not go to school in order to attend this. I think it means a lot more like it's the power of individuals to protest against the actions of governments and corporations rather than just the individuals. We've had like such a huge focus on blaming individuals for using things that are things that aren't biodegradable, things that are products of pollution, but we've never really held the governments and the corporations and the people who profit off of this whole thing accountable, and I think that's kind of what this whole thing is about.
Do you think nuclear energy has any role in this movement?
Probably, yeah. I mean, as we move toward that, we end up with energy that has a lot less pollution being put out. It's still not really the end goal because there is still like nuclear waste coming from it, but ultimately nuclear energy gaining more traction around the world has definitely like kick-started a larger movement of realizing that oil and the oil profiteers are the problem with climate change.
I also see you have Trump's head here on a stick.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're a fan of Trump. I guess you're promoting him here with the stick. Can you tell me a little bit more about what this is and what you mean by this?
Well, it's a little bit more of like an effigy. She's the one who made this, but I've been carrying it because she doesn't like carrying it. Yeah. What did you mean?
I meant that Donald Trump should be on a stick.
Like his head on a stick, though? We shouldn't have our president be killed, right? Like.
Are you trying to get me?
Citizens action.
Not really. I don't. Just what does this mean? Is really the question.
It means that Donald Trump has a delectable head that should be a lollipop.
French Revolution style? Interesting. One last question, actually, for the both of you. We have some of the more extreme climate activist students taking an oath to not have children because of the climate issue. They're fearful that in 10 or so years, the world won't be able to sustain life. What do you guys think about that, and would you take that oath?
Definitely. I mean, unless if change is made now, which is definitely possible, it's just that it's not happening. It doesn't really make sense to be putting people into another generation of problems, as we did recently, like with the boomers, with the housing crisis and like all this other stuff. They created a whole generation of people who have to clean up after them. So obviously these people don't want to do the same thing.
You also taking the oath?
I would adopt pre-existing kids.
What a good answer. I see you guys have a sign here. It says, if you did your job, I would be in school. You have a sign that says, make Earth safe again. Your sign says, this minion is melting because of you. I really only had one question to you guys. I see some of the climate change activists are scared that the climate change is going to change so much over the course of the next 10 years that the Earth won't be inhabitable. So they're taking a pledge and an oath not to have children because of that. Would you guys take a similar oath not to have children because of climate change?
No.
Would you take that oath not to have children because of climate change?
I'm too young to tell.
Would you take that oath not to have children because of climate change?
No, I would not.
And why not? Aren't you guys fearful the Earth is going to end in 10 years?
Yes, but I don't know. I'm too young.
And what do you guys think?
Even so, I feel like that doesn't mean we shouldn't bring in new life.
Could you give me a little bit of a background about what the climate strike is? You students have off. Do all the students have off? What's going on?
Okay, well, it started with just the climate strike being where students just cut school to go to the strike as a form of protest. However, the mayor's office of sustainability and the DOE has approved students being excused to attend the climate strike for a better cause. I feel like this strike is really crucial because people need to know the things that the climate crisis is not an opinion, but it's a fact.
A lot of people will try to dismiss kids just because they're young. How would you respond to people just saying, oh, don't listen to these children, they're young? What about the people who are saying, I'm sure you're familiar with Greta Thunberg, she's the Swedish child, she spoke to Congress recently. A lot of people are saying, why are we listening to these kids? So why should we listen to you kids?
Okay, well, here's the thing. I have experience of people discouraging me from literally everyone discourages me. I feel like it doesn't matter that no matter what happens, who puts you down, you need to speak up for yourself, that no matter how much people put me down, I kept trying and trying and trying, and I made sure my entire school was aware of the strike and they knew how crucial it was.
what big changes do you want to see made to help address the issue? What are the big ticket items that we could accomplish to help take big chunks of the CO2 emissions that we contribute year over year out of the atmosphere? What can we do?
Okay, well, I'm from a nonprofit organization called Our Climate, where they support young leaders in advocating for science-based and equitable environmental policies. And I feel that us supporting the Community and Climate Investment Act that prices greenhouse pollution and uses the revenue to invest on a just transition to make New York City more energy efficient is helpful, because it's extremely helpful, because I feel that this bill that's being passed, the Climate and Community Investment Act, is going to change New York City and serve as a role model. Because
are these the big changes necessary to shift what we need to do to really reduce emissions? What do you think our target for reducing emissions is, and how do we accomplish that reduction, right? Because like politicians like AOC, that I'm sure you're familiar with, are trying to be net zero in 10 years. Do you think goals like that are accomplishable?
I feel like people make it seem like it's impossible, but it is accomplishable. Like look at the
10 years net zero emissions right now. You think the U.S. it's plausible for us to get there?
For the U.S., I feel like
are we setting up reasonable goals for us to accomplish net zero in 10 years? You think that's doable?
Yeah, I feel like that is doable, because I come from a really underdeveloped country known as Bangladesh, and in that country it is simply impossible, because the U.S. has better benefits, more expenses, and a better chance, because we're not as far gone from the climate crisis as we think we are, more or less. I feel that it's plausible for the U.S. because we have a huge budget and we're one of the most dominating countries in the world.
Absolutely. Last question. What percent of the CO2 emissions year over year do you think the United States contributes?
I feel like since the United States has like trades with Saudi Arabia with like the oil emissions and all that.
But like percent to the atmosphere year over year compared to other countries in the world. I want to make sure we're conceptualizing this right. How much do you think the U.S. contributes year over year?
I feel like the U.S. contributes more than 50%, because according to my research, I've learned that the U.S. Has the biggest oil mine where people drill oil is in Texas, and people continuously drill oil, and the oil spills have been going on for the past 14 years without anybody noticing. So I feel like this carelessness is causing more than 50% to like impact that.
Would it change your mind if I told you the U.S. only contributes about 20% of the year-over-year CO2 to the atmosphere?
No,
it wouldn't change your mind.
Yeah, it wouldn't change my mind, because even if it does now, in 50 years, if nobody stops it, it'll become more and more.
Yeah. How do we get those other countries on board? India, China, who are rapidly industrializing, helping the standard of living in those countries for those people now. You know, we live in New York City. We're in the big, beautiful city. You know, people in India and China don't have as much of the luxuries that we do. So how do we tell those people to stop using the fossil fuels too?
Well, I disagree, because India and China are progressing faster than we are. According to research, China has a huge solar panel the shape of a panda bear. Yeah, that's amazing. And India is already on board as well. All the other countries like Denmark are already advancing, and it's up to us as like one of the most dominating powers next to them to help.
Last question. Some students I know are taking a pledge not to have children because of the climate crisis. Would you also take the pledge not to have children because of the climate crisis?
I would, because it's the same as the hunger strike. It shows vulnerability, and the fact that if you let yourself out like that, if you show people that if this climate crisis is going to impact us, then we're not going to have any more kids. It's going to show people that like our generation isn't going to continue or advance in any way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So we're out here today for the climate strike. I see you have a gas mask on and you have a pile of cash inside here. Tell me a little bit more about why you're out here and what this stuff means.
Well, I think that we lost our way in the way we look at value. We value more money and consumerism than the most basic thing, which is oxygen. So this is new for me. I'm a real estate developer, and I'm feeling a lot about the way access capitalism is going and consumerism. So I think this represents that, where there is all this money in the world, but we're going to end up
with gas masks.
With gas masks, exactly.
What do you want to see our government do to help address climate change? What are the big ticket items that we should do to help change how we're treating the environment and how much CO2 we're releasing into the environment?
I think the number one is control lobbyists.
Okay.
Nothing bad about the job position of being a lobbyist, but they in a lot of pressure to produce, so they influence the government in order to produce more. Or look at the food industry, for example, that they can control the way that the lifespan of the food in order to create more. that's excess capitalism. I think we should start there. And hopefully this movement will do something.
Yeah. I know some politicians are talking about, like, we have a timeline, a very strict one. It's like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez specifically says we need to be net zero in 10 years or we're in big trouble. Do you think she's just trying to scare people, or does she mean that in 10 years it's over?
I don't know, but I think we all see that everything is much more. Everything, if the choices we buy our food, just where is it going to come from? And it's good that we have a wave. But what's the downturn and how we prepare for the downturn? So I think politicians and leaders in general need to prepare for that, what the downturn is going to look like. Yeah, but it's all going to start with a generation that's going to train to go on diet with consumerism.
What do you mean go on a diet? Do you want to see, do people's diets have to change to kind of address this issue?
No, I mean diet in consumerism.
Oh, okay.
So when I grew up in Israel, I had a pair of shoes for 3 years or whatever. Now, there is like every 2 months or a week somebody's buy shoes because they're affordable and it's a click away. So we've created an economy that's so easy to shop.
And not sustainable.
And not sustainable. And it could be sustainable for now, and it's creating a job market and it's great. But what's the horizon? So I think when they say we have 10 years, 12 years, it's like almost that's the stock market. It's looking at the future. What's the future of waste? There is an island of freaking plastic and garbage. I mean, all we have to see and say, we are species, we're smart, we've created, find a solution.
So we're out here today in Foley Square for the climate strike. That's what the youngsters are doing right now. I see you have a sign that says, there is no planet B, educate Washington. Plus, science over opinion. Let me know why you're out here today, what the sign means, what you guys are hoping to accomplish.
Well, I've been a science teacher for 40 years in Chappaqua, New York.
Awesome.
That's home.
What do you teach?
I teach science. Yeah, Chappaqua, as you may or not know, is the home of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Well, all right.
Whatever that would be.
Better than the present company.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the policy changes you want to see made to help address the climate change issue.
Well, we need fewer people, less beef, more fish farming, more sequestering carbon dioxide, whether in trees or bogs.
Yeah. But to put these into place, do you think, like in China, they had the one-child policy? Do you think the U.S. government should have like a one-child policy?
I think so, yeah.
Do you think that's do you think any politician would win on like a one-child platform?
No.
So if that's not exactly going to help, we need to address the energy needs. Can we get this energy elsewhere? Do you think? I mean, you're a man of science, I'd hope. What do you think?
About?
Where else can we get energy since we need to meet our energy demands?
Right above your head. Solar. Wind. I live in a solar community up in Carmel, New York.
Sure.
Every home there has to have some sort of solar wall or solar panel or water heating or electrical producing a panel. Yeah.
Do you think we could have enough solar and wind energy to address the overall energy needs of countries like the United States, China, and India, who's right now, I think our economy only uses like 2% wind and solar, 90-some% coal, natural gas, liquid gas, and then the rest is like a mixture of nuclear and other things like that. Yeah. So
it's got to be a gradual increase in natural sources of electricity and decrease in our consumption, especially calorie consumption. If we took all the overweight people here and distributed those calories evenly, we wouldn't have any skinnies in Ethiopia.
So should we have a fat tax, per se?
Yeah, but that wouldn't work.
Because beyond that, I mean, what do you think agriculture is such a significant contributor to CO2 emissions where we need to is that the big fruit, the big ticket item that's really going to make a dent and change the situation, do you think?
It's one of them, but we need agriculture. No agriculture, no food, so it's a dilemma. Yeah. But we are also addicted to our conveniences. We've had it way too easy the last century. Yeah. And now I'm on my way out, but these young people here, they've got to face their future with the rising temperature and the outcomes, the storms, the lack of food. It's going to be their ball game. Then thank heaven we got someone like Greta. She's Swedish. I'm Norwegian, so I identify with her.
That's funny. What do you think about more students being involved here? The schools, I think it was Bill de Blasio and other people in government here, gave kids the day off. Other Fridays, some kids have taken off to do this climate strike. Greta recently talked at Congress to our congressman. Do you think it's good that we have more of these very young kids involved in politics? And what about people who say, like, why should I be listening to this little kid anyway?
From the mouths of children comes wisdom. I've been teaching environmental education for 40 years. I did my master's degree on environmental education. Does it work or does it not work? It works and it makes a difference. So the younger you can get to the kids, the better off the new policies will be.
Yeah. Do you think nuclear energy has any role here?
You know, that's a yes and no answer. I've been against nuclear, but the fallout, if I can use that word, I think you're better off with nuclear than you are with coal or...
What do you mean about the fallout? Because if disposed of properly, fallout should be fine. I mean, I know there's a couple of noticeable, there are a couple occasions where it didn't go well, of course, but I feel like those are outliers. And in general, isn't nuclear really good on a per carbon basis contributing to the atmosphere? And isn't it the only reasonable pivot we have off of coal and gas right now?
Well, it's a reasonable way to go. True, the waste is a problem. It's going to be around for the next 1,000 years. But if you sequester it deep in some mountain without any water running through it, we may have a solution.
I mean, better than the carbon alternative, right?
Oh, yeah. Carbon is quickly polluting. Radioactivity may not pollute, or it may in 1,000 years or somewhere in between. At least it has a half-life. Carbon dioxide does not.
So we're out here today at Foley Square for the climate strike. I see you're a part of like a smaller coalition of vegans. Yes. The people behind us have the Go Vegan sign. Your sign says SOS, animal agriculture is a leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, water pollution, and habitat destruction. Yes. Can you tell me a little bit more about the climate change issue and how the vegan kind of melds into it?
Well, I think it's a huge part of trying to change climate change and trying to actually take action that all of us can take today, tomorrow, every day to really make an impact to help save the planet from this crisis we're in. And we came here as a contingent, vegans, because we often see this critically missing, this element of whether it's the environmental movement at large, whether it's the youth climate strike movement, not really talking about this issue. And Greta Thunberg is a vegan.
I didn't know that.
Yes, she used to talk about it a lot. She doesn't so much anymore. It could be strategic that she doesn't. But we really want to bring that message to especially the youth who may not realize that animal agriculture is a leading contributor to climate change, and we're not going to solve this problem without making that change.
When you say leading issue, I know animal agriculture contributes like 10% of the CO2 emissions that the U.S. is responsible for. Do you think that's like a big ticket item that could really address climate change, or what else do we need to do to really address it?
I think the number is probably higher because I think, I've heard 15%, I've heard higher. But I think when you look at the numbers, when you look at that we have many more billions animals that we are raising for food and for slaughter than we do humans, that most of the farming land on the planet is used for animals. The incredible pollution, the land habitat, the ocean dead zones, just like that's why my sign covers it all. We cannot get away from the fact that breeding billions and billions of animals with all of the horrors that go along with that, it's unsustainable. We have to make a change. The Amazon is burning because of cattle. Cattle ranching.
They're making room for cattle.
So this is a huge problem that I think, diet change is like a controversial issue for a lot of people. So,
do you think it should be kind of us encouraging more people to be vegans, or should it be government mandated? Just us encouraging people, right?
I think it's more empowering to realize that we don't have to wait for the government. That was the point of Greta Thunberg's movement, saying, I'm making these changes in my own life. We all can do these things. If we wait for the government, what if it's too late? Absolutely. We can make these changes today.
I know some students here are taking
Can I just take a...
Yeah.